Meantime, the White House calling Wednesday, April 2nd, Liberation Day for the American economy. President Trump will roll out his global tariffs. Stocks around the world already tumbling today. U.S. markets opening in the next half hour, so we're watching that. The president telling reporters this about those looming tariffs.
The tariffs will be far more generous than those countries were to us, meaning they will be kinder than those countries were to the United States of America over the decades. They ripped us off like no country's ever been ripped off in history. And we're going to be much nicer than they were to us, but it's substantial money for the country, nevertheless.
And as the president doubles down on the tariffs, a new poll by CBS shows Americans feel he's focusing on the wrong thing. 64% say the Trump administration isn't focusing enough on lowering prices. 55% say Trump is focusing too much on tariffs. Here now, NewsNation political contributor Dr. Lauren Wright, political scientist at Princeton University. Welcome to you. Safe to say there's just a lot of uncertainty around tariffs, right? What the long term looks like. So at this point, what are the benefits and risks of the tariff proposals as we wait for Wednesday?
And some of that uncertainty, Marni, is that people that we poll often don't have a firm grasp of what tariffs are. They understand what lowering prices means, but there really is a muddled message when it comes to the impact tariffs will have. I will say, on the one hand, President Trump has been saying he will do this on the campaign trail. But on the other hand, there are very real consequences, and he doesn't have much public opinion runway left here. He has some, that CBS poll that just came out, I thought was really interesting, showed Americans still blame Biden more for inflation than Trump, even now that Trump's been in office for quite some time. But he's being buoyed by popular immigration policies, popular cost-cutting measures, but he really is on shaky ground. This is a controversial policy, and it very well might impact prices.
And prices specifically to certain big industries, the auto industry one, tariffs on 25% of imported cars, some car parts set to be implemented this week, barring any last-minute reprieve. How might that influence the tariff talks?
Well, what's really interesting about the auto industry, and now what we're learning from behind the scenes reporting on our farming industries, is that Trump is considering, and Republicans are pushing him to carve out some major exemptions here. And so if you start making exemptions for certain industries, which is understandable, then what do you have left? And then who is left holding the bag, and who is left with the higher prices? Businesses across the board probably don't think that's very fair. So even Trump in his own messaging is aware that this could backfire. However, he's really staking his economic legacy on this. He has said he wants this for some time. He thinks it's going to work in the long term. And he thinks he has the room short term to potentially take a public opinion hit.
Meantime, Tom just talking about this in his report, but the president threatening so-called secondary sanctions on Russia if it does not engage in the talks that bring a ceasefire with Ukraine. How does that factor in? What's the significance of that secondary tariff?
Well, look, I won't go out on a limb and say that sometimes Trump's threats, whether it's tariffs, whether it's militarily, don't sometimes end up having their intended effect. Some of his tough talk is effective. But again, I don't think we know because, Russia tends to be a predictable actor in some ways. But now that they're stepping away from the negotiating table, there are some elements that even Trump himself did not anticipate. We don't really know how this is going to end up. And so, a lot of Americans will be supportive of the tough talk on Putin and Russia. But again, if the whole deal falls apart and he had promised peace between Russia and Ukraine, that could be something where his foreign policy plank doesn't turn out the way he hoped.
Yeah, a lot of unknowns at this point. Dr. Lauren Wright, as always, thank you.
Thank you.